Bismillah. He is the benevolent, the giving and merciful. He's so indescribable. His love is irreversible, word undeniable, lyrically untriable, ultimately viable, eternally supplyable, maybe inconceivable, but beautifully believable. The true reality, there's no similarity. Gave us more than charity, peace and prosperity. Why did we never care to see it? We can keep its clarity. The Almighty, the Father metaphorically, but in the history they tried to make his word a mystery. Gave him mortality, anthropomorphic fallacy. Say he's got a seed, they can never bring the proof to me. And honestly, the greatest, the best, beyond time and space, beyond matter and flesh. Yes, he's uncomparable, yet his parables infinitely listed pictures couldn't give a good description. The pictures missing, but he created all the living in every dimension, and he inspired what I'm giving, the giver of wisdom, devoid of any needs. Anything that he wants, all he has to say is be, cause he's the untouchable, infinitely trustable, his plan unstoppable, power untoppable, the reliable, undeniable, greater than the physical, master of the mystical, the master of the worlds, the fashioner of seas, the crafter of the universe, the atoms to the bees. He is love, he is truth, he is light, he is one, he is king.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
And Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Kareem.
And like the minister say, that Kareem comes from the Arabic root karama. I love it, boy. I love it. Barakah. Oh, man, I love our minister. Praises be to Allah. Let us open in prayer. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Say, I seek refuge in Allah against the accursed Satan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment in which we now live. Thee alone do we serve. Thee alone do we beseech for help. Guide us on the right path, the path you bestowed your favors upon, and not the path you brought your wrath down upon, nor those who've gone astray after hearing thy teachings. We humbly submit this prayer in the name of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and we say, Ameen. Allahu Akbar.
Praise be to Allah. Welcome to season 3, episode
7. Man, I almost got. I was like, hang on, what episode is this? Episode 7.
It's been
a whole week.
a whole week.
It's
Great.
going by fast. So
It
praise be to Allah.
So, episode 7 of the 99 attributes of Allah in 30 days, where we take 3 to 4 attributes per day and go into their meaning and their usage in our environment. This year's theme is living by the book, attributes in action. Allah says in the Holy Quran, quote, Allah, there is no God except He, to Him are the most beautiful names, end quote. And believers, these beautiful names are the 99 attributes of Allah.
And the 99 characteristics of Allah reflect the noblest qualities and abilities. They represent the perfect ideal for human beings to inspire to. Islamic tradition says, derive your manners from the attributes of Allah. Therefore, beloved brothers and sisters, our beloved Prophet, peace be upon him, is reported to have said, cultivate from within yourselves the attributes of Allah. And our minister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, tweeted, when you have an attribute of God, you should strive for degrees of excellence in that attribute.
Praises be to Allah. That's right. So this year's theme, living by the book, attributes in action. And we thank Almighty Allah for Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who He gave the book to manifest as a man, right? But we also know that that book also represents Master Father Muhammad. That book also represents the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So let's hear what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has to say about that Maajid, who is that book. Praise be to Allah.
As we have been sharing with you in these broadcasts of the time and what must be done, the representation of the great Mahdi, or long-looked-for guide of the Muslim world, Master Farad Muhammad, who is the master of the wheel, and the great Jesus, the Christ. The Christ and the Mahdi are one and the same. For Christ means one anointed with power to crush the wicked. And the Mahdi is one also anointed to set justice in the earth and to set down every tyrant. And we are saying that in our humble judgment, he, the Mahdi, the Christ, is so magnificent. There has never been a manifestation of God like him. And when the Quran says in the 112th surah or chapter, and there is none like him, never has there been one like him who is the master of that great mother plane or wheel. He is the manifestation of all of the 99 attributes of Allah plus a few more, as Allah is always coupling his attributes in this manner. He's mighty, but he's wise. He's strong and powerful, but he's the forgiving and the merciful. He is the avenger and the destroyer, but his power is always balanced with his oft returning to mercy and his forgiveness. He's always balanced. We would have to do something so terrible that would allow him to unleash the fullness of the power that he has.
Praise be to Allah. Praise be to Allah. You know, in the minister's words, in just this theme, why it's so important that we live by the book, the attributes and actions. So if you really think about that theme, living by the book, the commands of God, makes me into who I really am, right? The reality of God, which is a God, right? As the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, and our Savior has arrived, page 26, right? And that's so important because we're being made new. You know, on the front page of the final call, it has it has refuge, renewal, and recommitting. So when we look at that, when I'm seeking refuge in him, it's making me new. And then in that newness, then now it's allowing me to commit or recommit to who I really am. Right? So this is why we're saying living by the book, the attributes of God. What you thinking?
Oh, I'm listening because as you're talking about the newness of it and being a new person and coming into a new heaven, a new world, we have to have a renewing of the mind.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so that's what I'm thinking. Like it has to be a total mindset that has to be renewed because it goes back to where we used to be.
Right.
You know, back to the beginning.
Correct.
When we had that mind of God.
When we knew the reality of God, right? Then an event took place and we had to hide himself.
That's right.
And then he came out of hiding. So the minister said there has not been, paraphrasing as he said it, and we both kind of looked and said like, wow, there has not been one wiser than that one that who came with that manifestation and with that power, carrying those 99 and then some. Because did not the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say that the minister's name was an up-to-date modern name of God? Farrakhan. Let's say that again. Farrakhan. But praise be to Allah. But we have another, as always, these shows are so very special, you know, and so we can always say there's 4 great attributes for today with a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person. And, you know, and it's, so that she is. And I want you to introduce her, but I just want to say a few words about my sister, and how we're working together on this Al Quran team with our beloved Imam, student Imam, Brother Sultan Rahman Muhammad. And so me and Sister Qadira is working together on a weekly basis, really on a daily basis, through how we all communicate in the team. And when I tell you, these people are so brilliant, you know, and it's a fact that, you know, a lot of times when we are in these circles, Sister Sadia, is that I'm always either at the mosque, I'm teaching the class, going this, but this, in this particular group, I get a chance to come in and just listen, you know, share things. This is how brilliant a group that we have. And it's all throughout our nation. And this is one thing I love about our national secretary, you know, is that he's a talent scout, you know, and just knowing that all this talent that we have, you know, within our Nation of Islam, and this is one of them, one of them brilliant sister for Muhammad Vanguard, and our beloved Sister Qadira Muhammad. Go here
Praise be to Allah. And, you know, as you said about Brother Saad, you know, he is a talent scout, especially for our young people and our youth. And this sister right here, you know, you talk to her on that level, me and her, I know that she is a citizen of the globe, you know, interested in international affairs. And as we talked, she's done many things, you know, just as a youth that are phenomenal, that as adults would just blow your mind. But the fact that she sees Allah in everything, in all of the affairs of the world, you know, the systems of the world, as we talked about. And I love the fact that she's a vanguard, meaning she's one at the forefront of her, you know, her cohorts and the young people that she's influencing. So she is a phenomenal influencer, especially one with a spiritual being that you can't help but to notice. So at this time, let us receive our dear, beautiful sister from Oklahoma City, Sister Qahhar Muhammad. Assalamu.
But Oklahoma City by way of where?
Oh my gosh, by way of so many places on the East Coast. Originally, Muhammad Mosque number 7, New York. But I've lived all over the East Coast.
That's right, man. We one nation, right?
Yeah.
So, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. First of all, alhamdulillah. I am so honored to be here. I love our team, Brother Abdul Ali Mansari, and working with our team. I agree, just amazing, brilliant people. And again, just it's an honor to be here, and I will get started with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I bear witness there is no God but Allah, who came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. I further bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted Christ, and that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is their divine reminder, warner, and Jesus in our midst. In these names, I greet my beloved family from wherever you're tuning in the greeting words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum
and
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Kareem.
So the attributes that I will be discussing today are Al-Qahhar, Al-Barr, Al-Maajid, and Al-Qadeer. And with the attributes, the first one I will be starting with is Al-Qahhar. Now, Al-Qahhar means the subduer, the ever dominating. And the definition of, when I was looking at that, I was like, what does subduer mean, really? So the dictionary definition of the subduer is someone who overcomes and establishes ascendancy, as in power over another, and control by force or persuasion. And I wanted to go a little bit deeper into it. So I also looked into the root word of Al-Qahhar, and it comes from Qahhara, meaning, there's many meanings, but the one that really stuck out to me, and which is why it's in bold, is to get mastery over constraint. And I found with more research that this attribute can also mean the master. So with these definitions, the idea of this attribute is that really Allah has complete and total control and power over everything and everyone. And it makes sense. This is his creation. So it would make sense that he has complete and total control, and he can essentially get everything and everyone to do what he wills. And when I was thinking about like, okay, how can we apply this to our everyday lives? I found a verse from the Holy Quran, Surah 3, Ayat 160, where it states, if Allah helps you, there's none that can overcome you. And if he forsakes you, who is there that can help you after him? And in Allah should the believers put their trust. And so where I see that is, if Allah helps you, there's no one that can overcome you. So again, going back into the point of he has total control and power over all. But if you are seeking his help, the caveat is really to be able to call on that attribute is to first truly believe that Allah is possessor of power over all things. It's the belief of that is the prerequisite, right? And by that virtue, that means on the flip side that if we are not connected to him, if we're not calling on him, if we're not turning to him for everything, and I mean everything in all our affairs, we are then totally powerless because we're not connected to the subduer. So that essentially means, for example, we need to say Bismillah in the name of Allah in everything we do. We need to like really call on Allah, even in the small things. So for example, you have a test that's coming up in school, Bismillah. About to have a conversation with somebody and nervous about the outcome, Bismillah. Preparing for what you'll say at the 99, the one talk today, big Bismillah. But this is, of course, this also applies in times of adversity and difficulty that we may face. And the Quran instructs us to put our trust in Allah, that he has mastery over all. So there are some examples from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. In Closing the Gap on pages 416 and 417, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, and I quote, "The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to me, if 10,000 enemies was standing out in front of my door, I would not fear." And in one speech, he said, "I feel so strong that I could go down the street dragging 2 lions behind me." Well, where was his strength? Where did his strength come from? What sustained him for 44 years in the midst of the worst opposition and constant threats of death? He was sustained because he knew his place of refuge. He sought it completely and found it and stayed there. He told me, he said, if Master Fard Muhammad left me for one fraction of a second, you would see a walking fool. Well, that told me that if he could not stand to be away from Master Fard Muhammad for a fraction of a second, that he would be exposed as a foolish man once knowing him as a wise man. End quote. And the minister goes on further saying that as a student of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that he does the same as his teacher. And so when we talk about and we see the fearlessness that both men have against the greatest adversities, people literally plotting their deaths, people working openly and secretly against them, you see that really the key is that they have their complete trust in Allah and Master Fard Muhammad. So now, in terms of how we can begin calling on Al-Qahhar and be able to handle those adversities, again, I will reiterate the key to applying this attribute is putting our total trust in Allah. We must make him sufficient. He's eager to show us his power and that he is with the believer. But how do we make Allah sufficient? Personally, in my life, I began with studying. I did a whole lot of studying to find answers to situations, especially in my high school and early college years, because there was just a lot of new, I guess, well, you being a teenager and a young adult, like just new life situations and trials that were coming my way. So I would actually search for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's examples of a similar trial he experienced in his life, through his lectures, through books. And when I was looking for like similar trials that he went through, I would ask, what was his outlook? How did he make Allah sufficient in this scenario? And I really like leaned on that. And I tried the path that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan tried when he was going through that. And I did that because I knew that if Allah got the minister through this, then he can get me through it too, if I followed that example. So now when trials come, when adversity comes, I can look back on the trials of my past and see that I made it out to the other side. And I know, so whenever and this is for anyone, if you ever have doubt or fear in a situation where you're going through a trial, think back on the times, the other trials you went through. You're here, you made it through. Master Muhammad, Allah, he got you through that. And so for me, I held on to that and never let that idea and feeling go. So now I've come to not just believe, but to know that Allah can get me through anything. And that is where I feel in the deepest depths of my heart that he is Al-Qahhar. And of course, that is the first step, because now, there can be more trials and more intense trials. And this is just the first step, right, to getting into that. But we don't have time, so I'll have to move on. The next attribute I have is Al-Barr. Al-Barr means the source of goodness, the kind benefactor. In the dictionary of the Holy Quran, it states that it comes from bara, which means to be pious, just, virtuous, act justly, be truthful, beneficent, bestow bountiful gifts, show kindness, keep an oath, act well, be true, behave courteously, deal benevolently. So when we talk, so that's one part for the goodness, right? But when we talk about the source of goodness, I looked up also the word source. Source means a point or place at which something is invented or provided. So essentially what this is saying is that Allah is the origin of goodness. He's the origin of virtue, the origin of kindness and beneficence and truthfulness. And in terms of applying Al-Barr, I think of this attribute as really telling us that goodness begins with Allah. And because it begins with Allah, the idea of goodness is really an act. It's a verb. And what I mean by that is when we look at the word source, for me, that implies that there's some kind of movement, right? Because when you have a source or the origin of something, that means that there's something on the outside that something has to get to. So there's a point B, the source, the origin, point A, and then there's the point B, and there's a way of getting there, right? So that's what I mean by it being something of movement. And I think it's interesting to think of it in that way, because what it says to me is that goodness doesn't just happen. We say, like, in the Nation of Islam, that we don't believe in a mystery God. That's a phrase that we often talk about and you might hear about. And oftentimes, I'm talking about in general with anybody, we might be in spaces or environments where people may not be acting justly or being kind or being virtuous or acting morally. A lot of times, like in just the world that we live in, we ignore it. We may complain that the space is terrible. We let it affect us emotionally and spiritually. And we may even know that something may be wrong, but we say, someone else will have to handle that. We'll wait for someone else to do something about that and make that change. And what I think about are those videos that circulate on Facebook. They're kind of corny to me, but they might show a homeless individual or a blind person or something, and everyone's just walking past them. No one's helping because either they don't care or they just assume someone else is going to help them. And then the whole point of the inspirational video was like, oh, be kind, be good, be that person to make the change, right? So goodness isn't some mysterious force that just sprinkles itself in the air like fairy dust and then everything just suddenly becomes good. What this attribute is saying to me is that the responsibility lies on us directly to be the one, to be the origin, the source of goodness that is to be brought into any space we enter. So if we don't see people acting justly, being kind, morally correct, if we don't see that happening around us, We need to be the impetus of it. That quote unquote burden falls on us to do. Or if we see goodness, it's our responsibility to continue moving it forward. So the Quran actually shows us some practical examples in many, many places. It's all over the Quran on how to embody al-Barr. I'll just quote a couple of verses. There's Surah 4, Ayah 86, where it states, and when you are greeted with a greeting, greet with one better than it, or return it. Surely Allah ever takes account of all things. So it's saying like, Assalamu alaikum, right? The greetings. It's a prayer of peace. When we give the greetings, we are extending that goodness to someone. But the Quran is also saying when someone gives it to you, you return one with a heartier greeting. And this, to me, also speaks to not just when you're giving the greetings, but in general, when we talk about goodness, we are expected as Muslims not just to reciprocate it, but to amplify the goodness that's been given to us. Of course, there are other verses in the Holy Quran as well about giving, your spending out of your wealth. But another verse that that really stuck out to me was Surah 4, Ayat 135, which actually Sister Sadia happened to quote yesterday. So we're on the same page. Oh, you who believe, be maintainers of justice, bearers of witness for Allah, even though it be against your own selves or your parents or near relatives. Whether he be rich or poor, Allah has a better right over them both. I'll stop there for that quote. So what to me it's saying, Allah is telling us that goodness is also in the spiritual sense. It lies in our moral compass. To again, remember going back to the roots of this attribute, to be just, being fair, right? It has morally good. We have to be truthful. And really it means acting justly in every situation, right? Every situation, even at the expense of ourselves. Sometimes we don't want to acknowledge when we've done a wrong. Sometimes we don't want to acknowledge the fault, but it falls on us, even if it's against ourselves, to act justly. And in that, we're doing good. So going to the next attribute, al-Maajid, the illustrious, the magnificent. In the dictionary of the Holy Quran, it also defines al-Maajid as glorious, great, illustrious, eminent, magnificent. And so beautiful, these words are just so beautiful. It makes you feel so good just reading them, right? So but looking into the definition of it, illustrious means well-known, respected, and admired for past achievements. But something that also stuck out to me was that al-Maajid can also mean the most honorable. And when I found out that it could also mean the most honorable, I immediately thought of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, because honorable is literally in their title. And those of us who are familiar with them, which is probably most of us in the space, we're familiar with what they've done, then we know they embody that attribute. And how? Well, let's look into the definition of honorable. Honorable means deserving of respect or high regard, consistent with a reputation that is not tarnished or sullied, characterized by integrity, guided by a keen sense of duty and ethical conduct. So when I read those definitions, my mind immediately went to the criterion, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's July 4th, 2020 message, and he had a white carpet there. And he explained the purpose of using white. And I'm quoting, he said, I walked to this podium on a white carpet. I refused to walk on red because all you world leaders got your power from shedding the blood of those that may have been in opposition to you. I come on a white carpet because in the 65 years of my being a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I have never shed the blood of another human being to get where I am today, which to me is very honorable. And this is just one example of many of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but also the most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, of their reputation of high integrity and moral character. I also want to bring up Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, in this one too, because when we talk about examples of embodying that attribute, before he began establishing Islam in Arabia, before the Holy Quran was first revealed, he had a reputation already of high honor and nobility. Quoting, like even as a child, quote, Abu Talib, speaking of him to Abbas, bears testimony to this effect. I have never seen him tell a lie, indulge in jests and vulgarity, or mix with street boys. Again, he was a child and he had this reputation. And it is that character that I personally believe is that way Allah shaped him so that he would qualify him for his mission. So this attribute, al-Maajid, is earned when we strive to exude the highest of character and consistently maintain our moral standards and to never compromise on our morals. So in terms of beginning taking steps, we need to do some self-examination and be honest with ourselves, I believe, to see if we are really fitting the check boxes that would make us worthy of being illustrious, magnificent, and have that reputation precede us. So what I mean is like really taking some time, self-analysis to see who am I right now? And asking ourselves the questions, maybe through journaling, maybe discussing it with somebody else, but probably best between just you and Allah. But you can ask yourself things like, do I make my word bond regardless of whom or what? Am I genuine in what I say and what I do? Do my actions align with what I profess to say I believe? And yes, of course, this includes the 5 pillars of Islam, but that's the first step. There are other layers to that too. When we talk about, do my actions align with what I profess I say I believe? For example, in the restrictive law of Islam, we are taught that the guiding rules of conduct, that good manners that protect good morals. So another self-analysis period you can do to see how you can get deeper into becoming to be able to exude this attribute is to actually just like go down the list from our guiding rules of conduct and ask yourself, am I doing that? For example, and I put some in bold, and do I not lie? Do I speak the truth regardless of circumstances? Like in every situation. And do I really love my brother and sister believer as I love myself? Am I being kind and doing good to all? Or am I just being kind to people who are Black, or I'm only being kind to people who are my friends or people who agree with me? Or like, am I limiting where my goodness goes and my kindness goes? And even am I maintaining my posts until properly relieved? That falls not just on posts, but in every aspect of our lives. When we are given a job, any assignment, it could be as small as getting a coffee for somebody. If somebody asked us to get a coffee, do you do it? Do you do the quote unquote small tasks? Or am I reliable on getting that post done? What about a project that you have to complete at work, or a project at the mosque? When we say we're going to do it, do we really follow through with what we promised we would commit to? And if we are doing all these things from the guiding rules of conduct, then we are well on the road to embodying al-Maajid, the magnificent, the illustrious, the glorious. So the final attribute I have is al-Qadeer, which is the capable, the powerful. Capable means able to do things effectively and skillfully and to achieve results. Powerful means having great power, prestige, or influence, having the ability to control or influence people or things, having a strong effect on someone or something. And we can actually see, again, these attributes demonstrated by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad through his work, where even though he's not physically among us right now, he is on the wheel, but decades later from his work from 1930s to 1970s, we can see the world bearing witness to what he has done. For example, How to Eat to Live, right? We've been doing How to Eat to Live for decades, 1 meal a day in particular. Now we're seeing people bearing witness to the health benefits and calling it intermittent fasting, or maybe not totally 1 meal a day, but they're getting close to it, right? Black power, Black Lives Matter, just the idea of Blackness. Remember, we weren't calling ourselves Black. We were colored, we were Negroes, but even more than that, not just making the term Black, like having the term Black be something in our, how we identify as a people now, but the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us what Blackness really means. What does it mean to embody being Black? He gave us the divinity behind it. And so and now we even see today people, even if they're not in the nation, maybe never have even heard of the nation, thinking in that way. And so the impact his work has really made on Black consciousness, that's the power, right? So the minister as well, we're at the point that when the minister says something, when he says it, what he says comes to pass quicker than before. It comes more intensely than it might have even like 20 years ago. So, or even 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So like, for example, the unraveling of a great nation on February 23rd, 2020, less than 2 weeks later, we experienced the start of the unraveling of a great nation through a total lockdown because of the pandemic. So for my personal experience, I will say one more thing about the minister with his power. From my experience, his power literally exudes out of him. So in 2011, the first auditor's graduation, I had the opportunity to shake the minister's hand because those who graduated were able to do so. And before I even got to shake his hand, like just a couple feet away, if not more, he literally had his own atmosphere. The best that I can equate it is like when you see the images of the Jesus with the halo, like he literally had like a halo around him. There's an anime that I love called Bleach, and they call it spiritual pressure. And that's also like the best way I can describe it. Like it's like literally like a force, an atmosphere that you can feel and almost see around him. And as we know, an atmosphere has its own sphere of influence, its own force and power. So like his power is literally like coming out of his body through his energy. But the key to both the power of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is their connection with Allah, with Master Fard Muhammad, and their level of submission to him. So I will leave with a couple thoughts. There's perceived power, and then there's actual power, right? Perceived power is the power of this world, power that's wrapped up in our ego, in our pride. People, like when it's like, oh, people notice I have a nice car, so like you get a nice car so people can like, because some people bow down to that. They say, oh, you have a nice car, I'll listen to you. Or people listen to me because I have followers, whether that's on like Instagram or TikTok, or you think you have power because, oh, I'm the leader or a boss of this group. So when I tell people to do it, they do something, they do it. And like, you know, having a kind of a puff up of our chests. But all of that is false perception of power. That's power rooted in the vanity and the desires of this world, which is not only temporary because it's rooted in this world, but according to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, things rooted in vanity can actually destroy the roots of our true power. He states in The Will of God, Part 1, from Self-Improvement, the Basis for Community Development, that, quote, the will is the real power of Allah, God, and man. However, the will must be buttressed or supported by faith and by knowledge. To be able to will is to have a creative force within that actually can change the condition of our lives, the condition of our homes, the condition of our community, the condition of the nation, and the condition of the world. But will without faith, will without knowledge, is power without direction. It is power that can be manipulated. It is power that can actually be used by a smart, crooked deceiver to make slaves of the totality of the human family. Therefore, all of us must be possessors of knowledge and faith. So again, in terms of personal ways that I've applied or work on applying Qadeer, I found that the more I've tapped into and tuned into Allah and the things that I do, the more power there is behind what I do. And it really, how, in terms of practical steps, like what does that look like to increase that being tuned into Allah and increasing in that power? I had to do some self-analysis. I know I keep bringing up self-analysis, but I'm really, really a strong believer that being honest with ourselves and doing that self-examination can help remove the barriers that we might be putting on our own selves. So I would do self-analysis, which is like, what is it that I really desire? Does what I desire and what I actually do, because what you desire and what you do can be two different things, but do they totally line up with what Allah would desire for me? Totally line up. And in order to know what he desires for me, that other step is that I've had to really meditate on him and his word. And by meditating, also begin observing the way he shows signs in my life, the way he speaks to me in my life, praying, talking with him, like, and by praying, I mean salat, with him, and remaining, because that salat really, for me at least, it really roots me and grounds me to receive what he's telling me to do. And then also studying, aligning. Again, I talked about the importance of studying earlier, but really that studying piece helps you to know like the guidelines of what Allah says to do. So without being studied, there's a lot of guesswork happening, but we have a blueprint and it's in our materials. And so when I do that, and what I've been really working on is like following what he says to the letter. So then I've gotten to the point that I'm so focused on what Allah has for me to do instead of like what I believe I should do, in the big things, but also in the small things, like in everyday decisions, then I'm actually able to manifest anything I desire. And I can say that with pretty strong confidence because my desires align with Allah, who is Al-Qadir. And so when we work on purifying our hearts by increasing our faith and our knowledge, one more thing I will say is back to the point about the minister having his own atmosphere. When we start doing that, increasing our faith and knowledge and purifying through which will purify our hearts, our energy will glow. We will start creating a natural atmosphere around us. And people will begin seeing and recognizing our power just by our presence. We won't need to force it. We won't need to make people acknowledge it. And because you will be like so in tune with Allah that the energy will just take up the space and your force and power will just be there by your presence. And with that, right, you'll be so comfortable in where your power comes from because you'll know it comes from Allah Most High. So with that being said, that is my piece. And I, again, thank you all for having me on today. I was really excited to speak with the believers.
Praise be to Allah. Praise be.
We're definitely excited to have you on.
Yes.
As well.
So as you were talking, like I'm pulling out books, I'm going through the study guides, pulling out the Holy Quran. So as you were talking about Al-Barr, the source of goodness, the kind benefactor, and pulling up Surah 108, the abundance of good, it says, in the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, surely we have given you abundance of good, so pray to your Lord in sacrifice. Surely your enemy is cut off from good. And then yesterday in Friday night study group, we are studying study guide number 6, building the will. So we're all on the same page. And in it, the minister tells us, he says, while each of these pillars, our pillars of faith, is necessary to our balance, it is prayer that is given the greatest prominence in the Holy Quran, followed closely by charity, which is often mentioned together with prayer. And so when he talks about our success in prayer and how that goes together and sacrificing, right, and the abundance of good, can you talk to us, some, just practicalities that you've experienced with your prayer and receiving success because of those prayers?
Mm. See, for me, there's been a couple, like coupling with Salah and particular dua. So when it comes to, as I was saying earlier, what Salah really does for me is just, that's my grounding period. So then when I am engaging, when we talk about like manifesting desires, when I'm like working in different aspects of my life, I'm able to be centered because I can feel like that connection with Allah after having done salats. And I, for me, I guess I was avoiding this word a little bit, but like it's the energy, really. The energy and tapping into knowing like what is Allah's energy in that when I do salat, and that's what I mean by staying grounded. And also when it comes to this particular dua, um, oh Allah, we beseech thy help and ask for thy mercy, for we believe in you and trust in you for all that we need. We are helpers in your cause with your apostle. Please grant to us success. I do that prayer a lot, and every single time I'm about to do something that is going to change some, like for example, I work for the International Youth Leadership Institute as a youth representative at the United Nations, and we are doing a work with that is going to greatly impact Black youth worldwide, inshallah. But whenever I also work with Qadira, and that everyone knows Qadira. Whenever we engage in any of that work, when we're with each other and talking, we tend to open up with that prayer. Because for me, I'm like, we're helpers in your cause with your apostle, please grant to us success. Like, it's putting Allah's law at the forefront, putting Master Father Muhammad, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, the honorable Mr. Farrakhan at the forefront of our minds in those discussions. And by doing that, things in that there's the success. I hope that makes sense. My answer makes sense.
Excellent, because I was going to ask you a similar question with regards to literally how you're answering it now, so we can just pretty much have a dialogue around it. When you look at Al-Qahhar, where it says, is the one who dominates everything in his kingdom, he is the one before whom the whole creation has humbled itself and submitted before his grandeur, power, and perfect strength, right? And so I was going to ask you to talk to us about the coupling that with Maajid, right? This honorable. How do you stay within the oneness of God? Because if an individual is doing this, dominating everything within his community, how do you stay grounded in the Al-Qahhar, right? So without using these attributes in our daily life. I know that you and I and us, we're not the Al, right? We get an opportunity to, go into our community and take back our community and have the people, submitting to that which we're laying out, which is Islam, right? The Nation of Islam, they come in. So we were really talking about how do you stay within humbling yourself to know that force is Allah, because we don't want to call like Moses in the Bible, must I smite the rock and the whole earth go free, right? So just staying within these attributes and using them. Talk to us about that. You already gave us some points of it when you were talking to us about the prayer that you and Sister Qadira give in going about the great work that you are doing.
Yeah, I think that the biggest part of it is really just going back to our root with the restrictive law of Islam is our success. When I mentioned earlier, even the good moral, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting how to say what it's good? Can someone help me out here? Good, give me 1 second. I want to say it correctly. Good manners that protect good morals. couldn't remember for a second. Good manners are protected morals. I think that a lot of it has to do with our moral compass and staying grounded in that, because when we are when we first realize that, like, when you're like when you're being truthful, when you're being just, when you are following those rules of conduct, that's really like the boundary of staying true to who we are, in terms of reawakening our self-accusing spirits, in terms of staying in tune with our nature. And so when you start following, and the reason I say that is because when you're talking about being the subduer, you can, well, even when I was doing the research for it, I was like, how do I phrase that to apply that everyday lives? Because we don't have control over everybody. And some people feel like like they can subdue people, but that's not what we are to do, like in terms of forcing people under our control in that way. Like, it can become immoral very quickly if you have a misinterpretation and misunderstanding of how to apply that. And so that's why I'm saying, like, in terms of like being rooted in our restrictive laws, being rooted in those boundaries, because in that we're so far, this world has made us so far removed on the positive and the beauty of what these attributes can mean, because people can take, again, power into a negative way. People can take even magnificence, and like their ego gets big. So we need to follow the guidelines within the restrictive law book, because those boundaries are realigning us back to our nature. And in that, we can have things in the correct perspective when we're engaging with these attributes.
Praise be to Allah. Excellent representation, sis. We appreciate you.
Yes.
Praise be to Allah.
26 of our Savior has arrived. You know, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that we are all Allah, but there's one upon whom which we throw supreme on, right? So making sure that as I am evolving into the Godship, right, that I stay within who I am, and not, you know, think that I am above that, right? Staying within my place. Don't think more than yourself, but get less of yourself either, you know, but finding our right place within that, and then work out the gifts that Allah has given to us. So praise be to Allah. Thank you. Very well laid out. Your PowerPoints are nice.
I know, right? I was looking at sources. Very meticulous.
Praise be to Allah.
Praise be.
Praise be to Allah.
And so she's just being true to her name, Qadeer, right?
Yeah, I said, now, you know, we're gonna let you have your name this year, right?
Influential, powerful, capable, right? And
Yeah, I was excited. I was like, oh, yay, I get to do my name this year, which also allowed me to do more research about it too. So I was really excited about that.
Well, you know, really, as this self-improvement, right? And I kept hearing you talk about that self-analysis, right? And it's just that breaking down and understanding just, you know, who we are, right? And through this life, this precious divine life that Allah, you know, has given to us. As the minister said, this is the only life that we have. You're about to say something.
Oh, wow, you caught that. Yes, sir. Like, just to add to that, when we talk about like living, going back to what I said earlier about living in this world, like what self-analysis allows us to do is like really like shed off what is not us, what is not ourselves. That was all I was gonna say to that.
Praise be to Allah. Now, you know, we work together, sis, so I know, right? No, praise be to Allah. Well, thank you, my dear sister. Sister, anything else?
oh no, that's it. We thank you, we love you, appreciate you, and you continue to do the good work and be the influence that you are.
Praise be to Allah. Love you too. I just want to say big fan of the series. I've been tuning in this year and last year too, and you all are doing an incredible work, and I appreciate you so much and what you're doing for us to be reacquainted with the attributes of Allah.
so important. And so we thank Allah for you, and let's continue to do that work, dear sister.
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
All right.
Excellent.
Now, yes, love that sister right there. Now, all right, for our announcements for the day. Tomorrow is day, so it's day
It's episode
8.
It's just 2 hours away, then we'll be into that day, right? But it's
Exactly.
episode 8.
So who do we have for tomorrow?
We
brother?
have our beloved brother straight out of Fort Worth, Student Minister Lee Muhammad will be joining us tomorrow, inshallah, for day 8.
Praise be to Allah. What they call it, Funky Town up there?
Yeah, I was gonna leave that part of it out.
That's where my husband is from. Praise be to
That's
Allah.
what they call it.
That's what they call it. He cleaning up the streets, right?
That's right.
Come on now, making it fresh and clean. All right, so 99 to 1 in 30 days. You can watch you can watch the replay for today's episode and past episodes in season on Facebook at Moz45. You can go to YouTube at 99 to 1. The most beautiful names. We ask you to follow us and subscribe as well on Facebook and Instagram at 99TMBN. And we are a nonprofit 5013C organization, 99 to 1. So all of your donations are tax deductible, and you can open up your phones. You can take your camera, aim it at the QR code, and it will bring up, there will be a link, click on it, and it will bring up the donation page. Or you can go directly to hashtag or $99 to 1 on Cash App, or you can put in the Gmail account, email 99tmbn@gmail.com for Zelle. And all of your donations are going to propagating the faith, producing more programs, and getting out there in the community with our brothers and sisters. And I encourage you, as we said from day one, go ahead on and order your Ramadan 2024 Quranic Reading Journal and Historical Digest. You can visit shop.researchminister.com to purchase our beloved brother, student minister, brother Demetric Muhammad, who will, inshallah, will be on for several years, about 4 or 5 years. He's been producing this Ramadan journal, and it's full of insight, full of wonderful tidbits about the Nation of Islam's history. So I encourage you to order your Ramadan 2024 journal. All right. Well, praise be to Allah. Another good episode, and I'm excited for tomorrow.
Praise be to Allah.
All right. Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak. Alhamdulillah.
Bismillah. He is the benevolent, the giving and merciful. He's so indescribable. His love is irreversible, word undeniable, lyrically untriable, ultimately viable, eternally supplyable, maybe inconceivable, but beautifully believable. The true reality, there's no similarity. Gave us more than charity, peace and prosperity. Why did we never care to see it? We can keep its clarity. The Almighty, the Father metaphorically, but in the history they tried to make his word a mystery. Gave him mortality, anthropomorphic fallacy. Say he's got a seed, they can never bring the proof to me. And honestly, the greatest, the best, beyond time and space, beyond matter and flesh. Yes, he's uncomparable, yet his parables infinitely listed pictures. Couldn't give a good description, the pictures missing. But he created all the living in every dimension, and he inspired what I'm giving, the giver of wisdom, devoid of any needs. Anything that he wants, all he has to say is be, cause he's the untouchable, infinitely trustable, his plan unstoppable, power untoppable, the reliable, undeniable, greater than the physical, master of the mystical, the master of the worlds, the fashioner of seas.